It's Friday the 13th almost, and we have to talk about the Friday the 13th movies. I haven't talked about these movies before, and even though I'm not a horror fan, I've watched many of the Friday the 13th movies, and I think Jason is an important character in pop culture. And can you believe there are only 12 Friday the 13th movies? I feel like there should have been 13, it only makes sense. But yeah, before I get started, please like this video, subscribe, and share if you can, and also go check out my social media pages for more content. I have Friday the 13th Part 3. This movie only has a 7% rating on Rotten Tomatoes, which is actually pretty dreadful. The movie isn't great, and it's one of the movies that I haven't watched, and I don't think I'm gonna watch it at all. But if you've watched it and you've enjoyed it, then good for you. At number 11, I have Friday the 13th, Part 8, Jason Takes Manhattan. At a score of 11%, it's a little better than the previous one, but this movie still sucks, if you can put it that way. It was great to see Jason in a different environment, and I'm sorry, but I have bad news for Ghostface, as Jason visited New York before he did. But I'm still excited for the next Scream movie. But this isn't about Scream, this is about Friday the 13th. At number 10, I have Jason Goes to Hell, the final Friday. And as it turned out, it wasn't the final Friday, it was the first of many finals. And this movie also wasn't one of the best. It currently has a score of 16% on Rotten Tomatoes. At number 9, I have Friday the 13th, A New Beginning, which was also the first of many new beginnings for Jason. This movie has an 18% score on Rotten Tomatoes, and yeah, I guess they wanted to reboot this movie franchise over and over again. And a year before A New Beginning, we got the number 8 movie on this list, Friday the 13th, The Final Chapter, which was supposed to be Jason's final chapter, but the guy just doesn't seem to die. This one has a score of 24% on Rotten Tomatoes. Let's jump to the future for number 7. At number 7, I have Jason X. This was actually the first Jason movie that I watched, or the first Friday the 13th movie that I watched. And back then, I guess it was okay if you're a kid watching a horror movie, but it didn't age well. I don't know why it's not lower on the list, but it has a score of 19% on Rotten Tomatoes. At number 6, I have the Friday the 13th reboot that came out in 2009. This movie has a 25% rating on Rotten Tomatoes, and according to the fans, it's not bad, but it's not great either. It's still watchable, so if you don't want to watch the original, then go check out this one. At number 5, I have Friday the 13th Part 2, the first sequel of many. It's a fun movie, a great slasher film, and it has a Rotten Tomatoes score of 29%. At number 4, I have Friday the 13th Part 7, The New Blood. This one is also okay, and that's why it's so high up on my list. It's watchable, it's a good slasher film. It has a score of 35% on Rotten Tomatoes. At number 3, I have one of my favorite horror movies from the 2000s, Freddy vs. Jason. I know many people didn't like it, but I actually did enjoy this movie. It has a decent score on Rotten Tomato of 43%. At number 2, I have Friday the 13th Part 4, Jason Lives. So this one was actually pretty good. It's one of the best movies from that era, or one of the best horror movies from that era. And yeah, it's one of many sequels, as you know, so far. But it has a score of 50% on Rotten Tomatoes, which means it's pretty watchable, or it's a decent movie. So go check that out. And in first place is the original Friday the 13th. And as we all know, this was a really cool movie. It brought new life to the slasher horror genre. And yeah, it's the movie that brought us the character of Jason. And it currently has a 63% fresh score on Rotten Tomatoes. So go check out Friday the 13th, or have a Friday the 13th marathon. Have a lucky Friday the 13th.